Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to a remote location and almost 150 years back in time. In northern Utah, the Wasatch Range was just as foreboding and rugged as it is today. Mount Nebo is the tallest peak in the range, rising an impressive 11,928 feet in elevation, and features steep hillsides, sudden cliffs, and hidden canyons. The forests here consist of pine, fir, and aspen groves, with wild berry bushes flowering and fruiting throughout the summer and early fall. Common animals here include elk, deer, bighorn sheep, and moose. The predators here include coyotes, cougars, bobcats, and black bears. The missing element in the predators here is grizzly bears, but in the 1870s, grizzlies prowled the forests, presenting danger to visitors and getting by on their wits as much as their claws. On December 3, 1878, 23-year-old Abraham Powell adventured out on a deer hunting expedition with Abe's brother John Powell and Little John Powell Junior. Also accompanying the Powell clan were mutual friends, Rhoades and Robert Snyder. They began their hunting trip on November 23rd and left their families in the comfortable confines of the homesteads and the warmth of the cabins there. They arrived at their destination near Nebo Creek a few days later. Now these fellows were not strangers to grizzly bears. They knew the key to hunting apex predators like grizzlies was to see them before they saw you. On one of his hunting trips, John had seen a big old grizzly bear on a ridge and climbed a parallel ridge to get a shot at it. He fired and missed once, but his second shot stunned the bear, which allowed John to claim its pelt and meat and establish a little more safety in the mountains. He'd reportedly killed 11 grizzlies throughout his life. Venturing into the frozen mountains was not an easy task. The men were not only risking the temperatures, they were surrounded by hostile Indian clans. In 1861, John had been cutting hay with a scythe when a band of 50 warriors encircled his location. They pitched camp on a bluff just above him and fired shots and yelled at him. John clearly had more guts than sense, as he simply walked right into the Indian camp, which went unheeded by the residents. He saw a pole draped with 7 scalps from white men, and John recognized 2 of them as being from his friends. The Powell family were Mormon settlers to the area who had fled Missouri a few years prior due to persecution. Escaping to the western wilderness, the Mormons sought out a place that would allow them to practice their faith without conflicting with other faiths, so they aimed their oxen and wagons toward Utah. The Powell boys and most people in this era were very resourceful and resilient. The winter deer hunting trip pushed the party to its limits, with plentiful snow and freezing temperatures. The men would camp out in the snow beneath the stars as the temperatures dropped and turned the ground as hard as concrete. One night Abraham was jolted awake after a fit during his sleep. A haunting and terrifying scenario had played out in his mind as he slumbered. He dreamt he was being attacked by a mysterious assailant. The villain had ripped open Abe's stomach and gashed him severely before he was startled from his sleep. In the morning, Abraham approached John and told him about his nightmare. John's response set Abe back a step or two, as he had also had a troubled night's rest. His brother indicated that he was burdened with a sense of impending doom and danger coming their way. The next day, John and Abraham were scouting the area for any sign of deer. John had walked to a point about 300 yards away from Abraham to look into the neighboring valley. As Abraham carefully slipped down the icy slope, he heard the sound of brush popping from a few yards away from him. Unbeknownst to Abraham, a massive grizzly boar had seen the hunters as they scouted and took up an ambush point, and Abraham had just walked right into the trap. The grizzly was on Abraham before he could cock and fire his hunting rifle. As John looked over the country, he heard his brother yell, "John! John!" He hurried back toward his brother and after several minutes stood over Abraham as he lay crumpled at the base of a standing dead pine tree. The sight of his brother's injuries was beyond what John could handle seeing. As John examined his brother, he noted that Abraham's scalp had been torn back from just beneath his eyes to the top of his head, essentially degloving his skull. His eyes dangled from their sockets and lay on his cheeks. John knew he couldn't spend a lot of time at the attack scene due to the grizzlies' location was unknown to him. John pressed his brother's eyeballs back into their sockets and wrapped his shirt around Abraham's head to slow the bleeding. Abraham asked his brother to get his rifle, and he hurried to fulfill his brother's request. After returning Abraham's rifle to him, John listened as Abraham described how the bear attacked him, then clawed and bit his rifle, trying to break it. John hefted his brother to his back and began the long hike back to camp. After an exhausting hike, John was able to lay his brother on his bedroll around 3 a.m. and began taking care of him. As he stripped his brother's clothes, he counted 47 different wounds imparted by the bear, covering nearly every part of his body. Abraham begged for water, so John filled his hat with snow and warmed it over the coals in the campfire. By morning, Abraham had drifted in and out of consciousness several times and seemed to be fading toward death. During one moment of clarity, Abraham asked John and Caleb to ordain him as an elder in the Mormon church and indicated he would die before sunrise. As the men watched over Abraham, they could see his life was slipping away. Just before breathing his last, he uttered, "Take care of Mother," before his head slumped to the side and his last breath left his body. The next summer, John returned to the area of Abraham's attack near Nebo Creek. He killed a large male grizzly bear there that he was sure was the one that had killed his brother. The huge bear stretched from corner to corner on a hay rack, which is defined as about 16 feet long and around 8 feet wide. In the 1800s, grizzly bears roamed much of the western United States, including the Wasatch Range of Utah. Grizzlies were known to be particularly aggressive when protecting food sources or territory. These bears typically weighed between 600 to 1,000 pounds, with males reaching up to 9 feet tall when standing on their hind legs. Regarding the bear's motives for attacking Abraham, it could be one of two causes. If the hunter stumbled into the bear and surprised it, then it could easily have been a defensive attack. But if the bear had laid up in an ambush position, then it was likely a predatory attack. There were no indications that a cached animal carcass or cubs were present at the time of the attack. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. At the time, grizzly bears posed a frequent threat to settlers, hunters, and trappers. Grizzly bears in the American West often had large territories and relied on game, berries, and roots to survive, which occasionally brought them into direct conflict with humans. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Did the grizzly lay in wait for the hunters, or was the attack a matter of Abraham being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Do you find it ironic that John had seen his friend's scalps on the poles of the Indians, and then saw his brother scalped by a grizzly bear? Had the bear been shot previously, and that is why it tried to break Abraham's rifle during the attack? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. It will help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.